The emergency klaxons screamed across Station Nexus 7, their harsh red light painting the corridor walls in blood-colored shadows. Commander Zethkree of the Galactic Coalition pressed his 6 hands against the viewing portal, watching in horror as another patrol ship exploded in brilliant white fire against the black canvas of space. "How many does that make?" he asked, his translator converting his chittering language into the common tongue. 17 ships lost in the past cycle, replied his aide, a tall, blue-skinned Altarian whose normally calm demeanor had cracked days ago. "The creature has destroyed everything we've sent against it, weapons, negotiation teams, even our most advanced AI-controlled vessels. Nothing works." Zethkree's mandibles clicked in frustration. For 3 standard months, the beast had terrorized this sector of space. It had appeared from the deep void between star systems, a massive thing that defied all known classifications, the size of a small moon, covered in what looked like organic armor that shifted and moved like living tissue. Tentacles the size of battleships writhed around its body, each one capable of crushing a cruiser with ease. But size wasn't what made it truly terrifying. The creature seemed to possess intelligence, a malevolent awareness that allowed it to anticipate their every move. It had learned to avoid their weapons, adapted to their strategies, and worst of all, it appeared to be feeding on the energy from their destroyed ships, growing stronger with each victory. "Sir," the communications officer called out, her voice tight with stress. "We're receiving a transmission from the human delegation. They're requesting permission to dock." Zethkree's secondary arms drooped with exhaustion. The humans. Of all the species in the Coalition, they were still the newest, the most unpredictable. Most of the established races viewed them as crude and primitive, despite their surprising technological progress. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 of their years ago, while some Coalition members had been exploring the stars for millennia. "What could they possibly want?" he muttered. "Haven't they reviewed our reports? This beast has destroyed some of the most advanced vessels in the galaxy. Their little human ships wouldn't last 10 seconds. The aide shifted nervously. "Actually, sir, they claim they might have a solution." A bitter laugh escaped Zethkree's throat. "A solution?" The Zerakians couldn't tame it with their mind-control technology. The Vorthon Empire's reality-bending weapons had no effect. The Crystalline Collective's matter reorganization beams simply bounced off its hide. What could these newcomers possibly offer? "Should I deny their request to dock?" Zethkree stared out at the wreckage floating in space. Pieces of Coalition ships drifted like metallic snow, each fragment representing lives lost and hope diminished. The creature had taken up position near the Kepler 442 system, blocking access to 3 inhabited worlds and a major trade route. Billions of beings were trapped, unable to evacuate or receive supplies. "No," he said finally, "let them dock. At this point, we need all the help we can get, no matter how foolish." An hour later, the human delegation arrived at the station's main conference room. Zethkree had expected a large group. Most species sent committees, advisory boards, and specialist teams for situations like this. Instead, only 3 humans entered the chamber. The leader was a woman with graying hair tied back in a simple knot. She wore a plain blue uniform without decorations or rank insignia. Her 2 companions were similarly dressed, a younger man with dark skin and steady eyes, and an older man whose weathered hands suggested a lifetime of physical work. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen," the woman said, her voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "This is Marcus Webb, our xenobiology specialist, and Tom Rodriguez, our animal behaviorist." "Animal behaviorist?" Zethkree's translator struggled with the concept. "You think this creature is some sort of pet?" "Not a pet," Rodriguez said, setting down a small device on the table. A holographic image appeared, footage of the creature taken from a safe distance. "But Definitely an animal. Everything we've seen in your reports confirms it. The room erupted in chittering, clicking, and various sounds of disbelief from the assembled alien officials. A Zarakian representative rose from his seat, his psychic crown glowing with indignation. "This is absurd," he projected directly into their minds. "Our psychic probes detected massive intelligence. The creature outmaneuvered our best tactical minds. It cannot be a mere beast." "Intelligence, yes," Webb agreed, studying the hologram. "But not the kind you're thinking of. Look at the attack patterns. See how it always strikes when ships are isolated? How it retreats when faced with larger groups? That's not military strategy, that's predator behavior." Chen activated another display showing energy readings from the destroyed ships. "It's not feeding on your ship's energy to grow stronger. It's feeding because it's hungry. Desperately hungry." "Impossible," hissed a Serpentine Council member. "We offered food, organic matter, energy cells, even live prey animals. It ignored everything." "Because you were offering the wrong things," Rodriguez said quietly. "Tell me, has anyone tried to determine where this creature came from?" Zethkri's mandibles clicked irritably. "Of course we have. Deep space scanners show it emerged from the void between the spiral arms. There's nothing out there. No star systems, no planets, just empty space." "Exactly," Chen said. "Empty space. Think about what that means for a creature this size. How do you feed something the size of a small moon when there's nothing around for light years?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Webb manipulated the holographic display, showing the creature's probable path through space. "We think it's been traveling for decades, maybe centuries," he explained. "Crossing the empty void between galactic arms, slowly starving. By the time it reached our galaxy, it was desperate." "Your ships," Rodriguez continued, "especially the larger ones, probably register as potential food sources, not because of their energy, but because of their size and heat signatures. To a starving creature, they might look like the massive space-dwelling organisms it would normally prey on." A crystalline collective member chimed in harmonious confusion. "But our weapons should have driven it away. Pain is a universal language." "Not if it's starving," Chen said firmly. "A desperate animal will fight through pain, injury, even mortal wounds to reach food. You've been trying to kill or control it, but you've never addressed the real problem." The Zarakian representative's crown flared brighter. "Even if your theory is correct, what do you propose? This beast has proven immune to our weapons and resistant to our technology. How would you feed something that size?" Chen smiled for the first time since entering the room. "We don't feed it directly. We show it where to find food." She gestured to Rodriguez, who activated a new display showing star charts of the surrounding sectors. 30 light-years from here is the Graveyard Nebula," he explained. "It's full of dead organic matter, the remains of an ancient space-dwelling ecosystem that died out millions of years ago. Massive organisms, some larger than the creature we're dealing with. And 40 light-years in the opposite direction," Webb added, "is the feeding grounds, a region where young star whales go to mature. There are hundreds of creatures there, many of them larger than our beast." Zethkri stared at the star charts. "You want to relocate it? Just convince it to leave?" "More than that," Chen said. "We want to guide it to where it belongs. This creature isn't evil or malevolent, it's just lost and starving." "That's a beautiful sentiment," the Serpentine representative said, scales rustling with skepticism. "But how exactly do you plan to communicate with something that has destroyed our best diplomatic teams?" "The same way we've been communicating with animals on Earth for thousands of years," Rodriguez replied. "Patience, understanding, and respect." The room erupted in noise again. Several representatives began speaking at once, their translators struggling to keep up with the overlapping conversations. "This is madness," the Zarakian projected. You're talking about approaching a creature that has killed thousands of our people. With what? Demanded a Vorthon general. Your species barely has functioning shields. One touch from those tentacles and your ship will be crushed like paper. Chen waited for the noise to die down before responding. We're not going to use a ship. The silence that followed was deafening. You're going to what? Zethkri whispered. I'm going to approach it directly, Rodriguez said calmly. In a standard exploration suit, no weapons, no threatening technology. Just me. The Altarian aide stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. You'll be killed instantly! The creature's hide alone generates enough radiation to fry organic tissue. We've modified our suits to handle the radiation, Webb explained. And Tom has 30 years of experience with dangerous animals. He knows how to read body language, how to project non-threatening behavior. This is suicide, the Zerakian representative projected, his psychic voice tinged with what might have been respect. No being should attempt such a thing. Rodriguez looked around the room, meeting each pair of alien eyes. Maybe that's the problem. You've all been trying to solve this with technology, with force, with your minds. But sometimes the simplest solutions require the most courage. And if you're wrong? Zethkri asked quietly. If this creature is malevolent? If it truly is untamable? Chen's expression grew serious. Then Tom dies, and you'll know we were mistaken. But if we're right, if this creature is just a lost, frightened animal, then maybe we can end this without any more bloodshed. The commander looked out through the viewing portal again. In the distance, the creature floated motionless among the debris of destroyed ships. Its massive form silhouetted against the star field. Occasionally, its tentacles would twitch, as if sensing something in the void. The Council will never approve this, he said finally. The risk is too great. We're not asking the Council's permission, Chen replied. We're informing you of our intentions as a courtesy. This is something we need to try. Zethkri's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of a human shaking their head. You humans are either the bravest species I've ever encountered or the most foolish. Probably both, Rodriguez said with a slight smile, but that's never stopped us before. As the human delegation prepared to leave, the Crystalline Collective representative chimed one last question. Why? Why risk your life for creatures you've never met? For worlds you've never seen? Rodriguez paused at the door, considering the question. On Earth, we have a saying, a creature in pain is dangerous, but a creature in fear is desperate. This isn't about being heroes. It's about understanding that sometimes the thing everyone calls a monster is just something that needs help finding its way home. The door closed behind the humans, leaving the alien officials in stunned silence. Outside the viewing portal, the creature continued its slow drift among the wreckage, unaware that its fate now rested in the hands of 3 members of a species it had never encountered, a species too young and foolish to know that some things were impossible to tame. Tom Rodriguez floated in the modified EVA suit 50 kilometers from the creature, close enough to see the intricate patterns on its hide, but far enough to avoid the worst of the radiation. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his breathing remained steady and controlled. 30 years of working with Earth's most dangerous animals had taught him that fear was natural. Panic was deadly. Readings are stable. Marcus Webb's voice crackled through the comm system from the human ship Persistence, positioned a safe 1,000 kilometers away. Radiation levels are within suit tolerances. Creature appears inactive. Through the transparent aluminum of his helmet, Tom studied the beast that had terrorized the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Up close, it was even more magnificent than the recordings had suggested. The creature's hide wasn't smooth armor, as the reports indicated, but rather a complex network of overlapping plates that moved with each breath. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its surface in slow, rhythmic waves, not unlike the breathing patterns of sleeping whales. "Definitely sleeping," he murmured into his comm. "Look at those light patterns, Marcus. That's a resting state if I've ever seen one." "The coalition ships are maintaining their distance," Dr. Chen reported from the ship's bridge. "Commander Zeth Kree is broadcasting warnings every few minutes about approaching the death zone." Tom smiled despite the gravity of the situation. The death zone, what the aliens called the area within 100 kilometers of the creature. But Tom had spent countless hours studying the attack footage, and he'd noticed something the alien tacticians had missed. The creature never attacked unless approached aggressively or at high speed. Ships that moved slowly were simply ignored. "Beginning approach," he announced, activating his suit's minimal thrusters. The key was to move like prey, not like a predator. No sudden movements, no threatening gestures, no direct approaches. As he drew closer, details became clearer. What the aliens had described as tentacles the size of battleships were actually more like sensory organs, covered in fine hair-like projections that swayed gently in the solar wind. The creature's eyes, each one larger than his ship, were closed, the lids sealed with a protective membrane. 40 kilometers, 30, 20. "Tom," Sarah's voice carried a note of concern. "Your readings are spiking. The creature's bioelectrical field is strengthening." "It knows I'm here," Tom said quietly. "That's normal. Predators always know when something enters their territory, even when sleeping." 15 kilometers from the creature's main body, Tom stopped and simply floated. This was the crucial moment, the first test of his theory. If the creature was truly malevolent, truly untamable as the aliens claimed, this was when it would strike. Minutes passed. The creature's breathing continued its steady rhythm. The bioluminescent patterns shifted slightly, new colors flowing across its hide, but it made no aggressive moves. "It's curious," Tom whispered in wonder. "Look at those color changes, Marcus. That's not aggression, that's curiosity." 10 kilometers away, one of the creature's massive eyes opened. The coalition ships immediately began broadcasting emergency warnings, their weapons powering up despite orders to maintain distance. But Tom saw what they couldn't. The eye wasn't focused on him with predatory intent. It was simply looking. The pupil, large enough to swallow a space station, moved slowly as it tracked his position. "Hello there," Tom said softly, knowing the creature couldn't hear him through the vacuum but needing to speak anyway. "I know you're tired. I know you're hungry. We're going to help you." The creature's eye blinked, a movement that took several seconds to complete. When it opened again, Tom was surprised to see what looked almost like intelligence there. Not the cold calculation of a predator, but something more complex, something that might have been loneliness. "Sarah, are you getting this? The eye movement patterns, the blinking frequency, it's consistent with higher cognitive function. This isn't just an animal, it's a thinking being." "We see it, Tom. The biometric scanners are picking up neural activity consistent with problem-solving behavior. But be careful. Intelligence doesn't mean it's safe." Tom began to move again, this time in a slow, spiraling pattern around the creature's head. He'd learned long ago that direct approaches triggered fight-or-flight responses in most species. Indirect movement suggested non-threatening intent. The creature watched him, occasionally blinking, but made no move to attack. More of its sensory tentacles began to unfurl, and Tom realized with growing excitement that they weren't weapons at all. They were exploratory organs, like the trunk of an elephant or the arms of an octopus. "It's trying to smell me," he reported, "or taste the chemical traces my suit is leaving. Definitely exploratory behavior, not aggressive." One of the smaller tentacles, still massive by human standards but tiny compared to the others, began to extend toward him. The coalition ship's warnings became more frantic, but Tom held his position. In his earpiece, he could hear Zethkri practically shrieking orders for him to retreat. "Tom, that appendage is moving toward you at increasing speed," Marcus warned. "Maybe you should—" "No," Tom said firmly. "Watch the body language. No tension in the main body, no aggressive posturing. It's just investigating." The tentacle stopped 3 meters from his position and began to weave back and forth, exactly like a snake testing the air. After a few moments, it withdrew slightly, and Tom heard something through his suit's external sensors that made his heart skip a beat. Sound. Not mechanical sound, but something organic. The creature was vocalizing. "Are you getting this audio?" he asked urgently. "Confirmed," Webb replied, excitement clear in his voice. "It's definitely attempting communication. The pattern is too complex to be random." The sound continued for nearly a minute, a deep, resonant tone that reminded Tom of whale songs, but infinitely more complex. There were harmonies within harmonies, patterns that repeated and varied like musical themes. When it finished, silence returned to space. The creature's eye remained focused on Tom, waiting. "It's waiting for a response," Tom realized. "It thinks I'm another member of its species." "Tom, you need to be extremely careful here," Sarah warned. "If it expects certain responses and doesn't get them, it might become aggressive." But Tom was already reaching for the audio controls on his suit. Years of working with dolphins had taught him that communication was often about pattern and rhythm rather than specific sounds. He activated his suit's external speakers and began to hum. It was a simple melody, Amazing Grace, chosen because its slow, steady rhythm was easy to maintain. He hummed each note clearly, letting the sound carry through his suit's speakers into the void where the creature could detect the vibrations. The result was immediate and extraordinary. The creature's entire body shifted, bioluminescent patterns flaring brighter as new colors cascaded across its hide. When Tom finished the first verse, the creature responded with its own vocalization, a modified version of the same pattern, but embellished with complex harmonies. "Incredible," Marcus breathed. "It's learning the pattern and improving on it." They continued their musical exchange for 20 minutes, with the creature becoming more animated with each interaction. Its tentacles moved in flowing patterns that resembled dance, and several more eyes opened to observe Tom's position. "This is breakthrough behavior," Sarah reported, barely able to contain her excitement. "It's treating you as a member of its own species. The question is, where do we go from here?" Tom had been thinking about that throughout the exchange. The creature was clearly intelligent and clearly capable of communication, but it was also obviously lost and hungry. He needed to find a way to convey that they wanted to help, not just communicate. He began to move again, this time deliberately toward the edge of the creature's sensing range. As he'd hoped, the creature's attention followed him, several tentacles extending to track his movement. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked. "Testing something," Tom replied. "If I'm right, it should follow." He activated his thrusters and began to move away from the creature at a steady, non-threatening pace. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the massive being began to follow. "It's working," Sarah reported from the ship. "The creature is matching your speed and direction. You've established yourself as a pack leader." "Not a pack leader," Tom corrected, watching the creature's graceful movement through space. "A guide. It's hoping I know where we're going." The next part would be the real test. Tom adjusted his heading toward the coordinates Marcus had provided, the direction of the Graveyard Nebula 30 light-years away. The creature continued to follow, but Tom could sense its growing agitation in the changing patterns of its bioluminescence. "It's getting anxious," he observed, "probably because it doesn't recognize this direction." "Tom," Marcus said urgently, "I'm picking up massive energy spikes from the creature. Whatever it's feeling, it's getting stronger." The creature had stopped following and was now floating motionless in space. Its vocalizations had changed too. No longer the curious, musical tones from before, but something deeper and more urgent. Tom recognized the sound from his work with lost animals. Distress calls. It's scared, he realized. It doesn't want to go further from what it knows. Maybe we should abort, Sarah suggested. Bring it back to where it's comfortable and try a different approach. But Tom was studying the creature's behavior more carefully. Yes, it was distressed, but there was something else. The way it kept looking back toward the star system it had been terrorizing, then toward the direction Tom had indicated. No, wait, he said slowly. I think it's trying to tell me something. The creature began moving again, but not in either direction. Instead, it swam through space in a complex pattern, back toward the system, then toward the nebula, then to a third point that seemed random until Tom plotted it on his navigation display. Marcus, look at this movement pattern. What's 40 degrees starboard from the nebula coordinates? Checking. That would be... Oh, wow. Tom, that's pointing directly toward the feeding grounds. The creature had stopped moving and was watching Tom again, its eye focused intently on his small form. In that gaze, Tom saw something that made his breath catch. Not just intelligence, but wisdom. This being had been lost for so long that it had almost forgotten where it belonged, but some deep instinct still remembered. It knows, he whispered. It knows where both places are. It's been trying to choose between them. The graveyard nebula would provide immediate sustenance, Sarah said, understanding dawning in her voice. But the feeding grounds would provide community, others of its kind. Tom made a decision that went against every protocol in the book. He moved his position to align with the creature's gaze toward the feeding grounds and began to sing again. Not Amazing Grace this time, but a lullaby his grandmother had taught him. A song about going home. The creature's response was immediate and overwhelming. Its entire body lit up like a constellation, patterns of light flowing from head to tail in waves of pure joy. Its vocalizations became a symphony of harmonics that reminded Tom of celebration songs from a dozen different cultures. I think that's a yes, Marcus said, awe clear in his voice. As if to confirm his assessment, the creature began to move toward the feeding ground's coordinates, but slowly, clearly, waiting for Tom to follow. For the first time in months, it was no longer lost. Tom, Sarah called. The coalition ships are requesting permission to follow at a distance. They want to document this. Tell them they can follow, but they need to stay back, Tom replied, settling into position beside the massive creature's head. This is going to be a long journey, and our friend here is going to need time to trust that we're really taking it home. As they began their journey across the vast emptiness of space, the creature began to sing again, not the distress calls or the curious investigative sounds from before, but something new, something that sounded remarkably like hope. In the distance, the coalition ships followed, their crews witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, a human befriending a creature that their greatest minds had declared untamable, guiding it not through force or technology, but through patience, understanding, and the simple recognition that sometimes the most dangerous monsters were just lost souls looking for a way home. The journey to the feeding grounds took 18 days at sublight speed, with the entire coalition fleet following at a respectful distance. Tom had remained with the creature throughout the trip, his EVA suit recharged periodically by supply drones from the Persistence. What had started as a desperate mission had become something unprecedented in galactic history, the first recorded interspecies friendship with a deep space leviathan. The creature, Tom had started calling it Echo because of its musical responses, had grown more relaxed with each passing day. Its bioluminescent patterns had shifted from the stressed yellows and reds they'd first observed to softer blues and greens. It sang constantly now, complex melodies that seemed to tell stories. Marcus had been recording everything, building what he claimed would become the foundation for a new field of xenobiology. Tom, Dr. Chen's voice crackled through the comm as they approached the coordinates of the feeding grounds. We're picking up massive biosignatures ahead. The readings are incredible. Through his helmet visor, Tom could see what she meant. The feeding grounds weren't empty space as he'd expected, but a vast region filled with flowing organic structures that looked like underwater kelp forests, except each plant was the size of a space station, and moving among them. Are those others like Echo? He asked, watching massive forms glide gracefully between the organic structures. Confirmed, Marcus replied, his voice tight with excitement. At least 30 individuals, possibly more. Tom, you're about to witness something no human has ever seen. A gathering of space-dwelling leviathans in their natural habitat. Echo had noticed them too. Its song changed, becoming louder and more complex. Tom could feel the vibrations through his suit as the creature called out to its distant relatives. For several long minutes, there was no response. Then, gradually, answering songs began to echo back across the void. They're responding, Tom said, watching Echo's excitement grow. The creature's entire body was now pulsing with light, patterns flowing across its hide like aurora. It's really going to work. But as they drew closer to the gathering, Tom noticed something that made his heart sink. The other creatures weren't approaching. Instead, they seemed to be moving away, their songs taking on warning tones. They're afraid of Echo, he realized with growing dismay. They can sense something different about it. The radiation exposure, Marcus said grimly. Months of feeding on ship debris have changed its biosignature. To them, it probably seems diseased or corrupted. Tom watched as Echo's excitement turned to confusion, then to despair. Its songs became pleading, desperate calls that went unanswered. The other Leviathans continued to retreat, leaving Echo alone at the edge of their territory. No, Tom said firmly. This is not how this ends. Not after everything we've been through. Tom, there's nothing you can do, Sarah said gently. Interspecies social dynamics are beyond our control. At least Echo knows where its people are now. Maybe with time. Time is exactly what it doesn't have, Tom interrupted, studying Echo's body language. The creature had stopped singing and was floating motionless in space, its bioluminescence fading to dim, hopeless patterns. It's giving up. After being alone for so long, rejection by its own kind might be more than it can handle. He activated his thrusters and moved closer to Echo's massive head, positioning himself where the creature could see him. Then he began to sing, not the lullabies or simple melodies from before, but something more complex, a song that told a story. It was an old folk ballad his grandfather had taught him, about a traveler who had wandered so far from home that when he finally returned, no one recognized him. But instead of giving up, the traveler found ways to prove who he really was, showing the community the songs and stories they had shared before his journey began. Echo listened, its head turning to focus on Tom's small form. Slowly, its bioluminescence began to brighten again. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked. "Echo knows the songs of its people," Tom explained as he continued to sing. "It's been humming variations of their melodies for days. If we can get it to sing those songs loudly enough, clearly enough, maybe the others will recognize it." It took nearly an hour of patient encouragement, but eventually Echo understood what Tom was asking. The creature began to sing again, but this time it sang the deep, ancient melodies Tom had heard it humming during quiet moments of their journey, songs that seemed to echo from the very heart of space itself. The effect was immediate. The retreating Leviathans stopped, their heads turning toward Echo's position. One by one, they began to sing in response, not the warning calls from before, but recognition songs. Songs of welcome. "It's working," Sarah breathed. "They remember those songs." The largest of the gathered creatures, nearly twice Echo's size and covered in scars that spoke of incredible age, began to approach. Its song was deep and complex, and Tom could hear variations of melodies he'd heard Echo sing during their journey. "Family," Marcus whispered. "Tom, I think that's Echo's family." The reunion that followed defied all description. Echo and the ancient Leviathan circled each other in an intricate dance, their songs weaving together in harmonies that seemed to make the space around them vibrate with joy. Other creatures joined them, until the entire gathering was singing in a chorus that could be detected by instruments light years away. "Tom," Sarah called, "you need to see this. The bioscanners are showing something incredible. Echo's radiation signature is changing, normalizing. Being near its own kind is actually healing it." Through his visor, Tom watched as Echo's hide began to shed the damaged outer layers, revealing healthy tissue beneath. The bioluminescent patterns were becoming brighter, more complex, taking on characteristics he'd seen in the other creatures. But the most remarkable change was in Echo's behavior. The lost, desperate creature that had terrorized shipping lanes was transforming before his eyes into something magnificent and peaceful. It played with younger Leviathans, shared songs with elders, and gradually took its place in the complex social structure of the herd. "Tom," Echo's song had changed again, becoming a specific pattern Tom recognized as the musical phrase the creature used when it wanted his attention. "I think it's trying to tell you something." Tom maneuvered closer, watching as Echo separated from the group and swam toward him. For a moment, he wondered if the creature was saying goodbye, if their friendship would end now that Echo was home. Instead, Echo began to sing a new song, a complex melody that incorporated elements from their entire journey together. The lullaby Tom had sung, the folk ballad, even fragments of Amazing Grace, all woven together with Leviathan harmonies into something entirely new. "It's a story," Tom realized, tears forming in his eyes. "It's telling the others about our journey, about how humans helped it find its way home." The other Leviathans listened with apparent fascination, their own songs adding commentary and questions. Tom found himself at the center of an interspecies conversation that spanned musical traditions, separated by millions of years of evolution. "Tom," Sarah's voice was subdued, "the Coalition fleet is requesting permission to approach. They want to establish formal first contact protocols with the Leviathan herd." "Tell them to wait," Tom said, watching the delicate social dynamics playing out around him. "Let Echo finish its story first." The song continued for nearly 2 hours, with the entire herd contributing to what was becoming an epic ballad. Tom realized he was witnessing something unprecedented, the birth of a legend that would be passed down through generations of space whales, a story about the small beings who showed kindness to a lost member of their family. When the song finally ended, something remarkable happened. The ancient Leviathan that Tom had identified as Echo's family member began to approach him directly, moving with slow, deliberate grace. Its massive eye focused on Tom's tiny form with an intelligence that seemed almost human. The creature sang a single pure note, a sound so beautiful and complex that Tom felt it resonate in his bones. Then it extended one of its smaller sensory tentacles toward him, stopping just short of contact. "Tom," Marcus said in wonder, "I think it's offering to touch you. In Leviathan social behavior, that's the highest form of acceptance. It's welcoming you into the family." With trembling hands, Tom reached out and gently placed his gloved hand against the tentacle. The contact lasted only a moment, but in that instant, Tom felt a connection to something vast and ancient, an intelligence that had roamed the spaces between stars since before Earth's sun was born. The Leviathan withdrew its tentacle and sang another note, this one picked up and repeated by the entire herd. Then, as if by some prearranged signal, the entire gathering began to move deeper into the feeding grounds, their songs fading to comfortable murmurs. "Echo's staying with them," Tom observed, watching his friend settle into position near the center of the group. "It's home." "Tom," Sarah called, "Commander Zethkri is requesting permission to speak with you directly." Tom activated his long-range communicator, allowing the Coalition commander's voice to reach him across the vast distance. "Human Rodriguez." Zethkri's translation carried an unusual tone, something that might have been awe. "What you have accomplished here defies all our understanding of interspecies relations. This creature that destroyed 17 ships, killed thousands of our people. You have shown us it was simply lost." "Not just lost," Tom corrected gently. "Alone. There's a difference." "Indeed. The Coalition Science Council is requesting permission to study your methods. We believe your approach to xenobiology could revolutionize our understanding of non-technological species." Tom looked back at the Leviathan herd, now barely visible as points of light in the distance. "You can study the recordings. But remember, this wasn't about technology or superior understanding. It was about recognizing that intelligence comes in many forms, and sometimes the most important communication happens without words. The Coalition owes humanity a debt," Zethkri said formally. "You have ended a crisis that threatened billions of lives and showed us a new way of thinking about the universe. How can we repay you?" Tom smiled, though the alien commander couldn't see it. "Just remember this the next time you encounter something you don't understand. Before you call it a monster, before you declare it untamable, try asking if it might just be lost." As the persistence moved to collect him, Tom took one last look at the feeding grounds. Echo was singing again, its voice joined by dozens of others in a song that spoke of home, family, and the unexpected kindness of strangers. In the months that followed, the story of the human whisperer spread throughout Coalition space. Tom Rodriguez became a legend, but more importantly, his methods became a new field of study. Xenobiological psychology was established as a formal science, with the principle that all intelligence deserved understanding rather than fear. The trade routes reopened. The trapped worlds were evacuated or resupplied. And in the deep spaces between the stars, the Leviathan herds sang new songs, songs that included themes of hope, friendship, and the small beings who proved that size had nothing to do with the magnitude of one's heart. Echo never forgot its journey with the humans. Whenever Coalition ships passed through Leviathan territory, the great creatures would sing special songs, melodies that incorporated human musical themes, welcoming the small beings who had first shown them kindness. And sometimes, late at night aboard space stations and ships throughout the galaxy, listeners could hear something impossible drifting through the cosmic background radiation. The sound of Earth songs being sung by voices older than civilization carried on solar winds to worlds that humans had never seen. The universe had learned a new kind of music, and it would never sound quite the same again.